It was late afternoon on September 10 when Menglong walked through the heavy glass doors of the Chaoyang District Public Security Station in Beijing. The cameras in the lobby captured him for the last time in public. His face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Steps dragging with the weight of a man who knew his hours were numbered. He clutched a thin folder under his arm. Documents that he insisted must be filed. Must be seen by someone in uniform before it was too late. Officers at the desk recall him as polite but visibly shaken. His voice low when he asked for a private conversation. The station, a square concrete building familiar to residents of the district, had become the unlikely stage for the actor's final cry for help. He was escorted down a narrow hallway to a small interview room with a metal table and 2 chairs. There he placed the folder on the table, slid it toward the officer, and whispered words that now haunt China's entertainment industry. "I can't escape them." The officer pressed him for details. Who were they? What did he mean? You hesitated, glancing at the surveillance camera mounted in the corner of the room. "Even here, I don't feel safe," he admitted. "The ones I mean, they control the places I trust. Even the walls have ears." His words were recorded in the officer's notes, though no video or audio would later surface. Forensic experts would claim the files from that night malfunctioned. Critics insist they were deliberately buried. What you feared became clearer as the conversation unfolded. He described strange calls, anonymous warnings, and faces in the crowd that reappeared wherever he went. His own management company was aware of his intentions to break free from a suffocating contract, and that they would rather see him silenced than risk exposure of their dealings. The folder contained fragments of contracts, screenshots of text exchanges, and a hastily written note in his own hand: "If anything happens, this is why." After nearly an hour, ended with the usual courtesies. The officer promised to escalate the report. "But you left unconvinced." Stepping out into the Beijing dusk, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to Xing. "I told them," he wrote. "They listened. But I don't think they'll act. If something happens, remember I tried." That message, time-stamped September 10 at 6:42 p.m., would later be entered into evidence and read aloud by Xing herself at a press conference, her hands trembling as she held back tears. That night, Yu went live for what would be his final broadcast. Fans tuned in, expecting his usual gentle humor. Noticed a strain in his smile. He laughed, but his eyes darted toward the edge of the frame, if tracking an unseen presence in the room. At one point he leaned closer to the camera, opened his mouth to speak, then paused and shook his head. The feed flickered, then continued, leaving audiences unsettled. On replay, some claimed to hear a faint whisper, others dismissed it as interference. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Yu reached out to Xing again. Their relationship, never publicly confirmed, had been a constant subject of speculation. Now, through encrypted messages, bear his fear. "They won't let me go," he typed. "Tomorrow may never come." She called him immediately, urging him to leave Beijing, to come to her. He refused. "If I run, they'll come for you too," he said softly. "Better one of us than both." The hours that followed are reconstructed only through fragments, delivery records showing a late-night meal ordered but never eaten, security footage from the street capturing a figure lingering near his building, and a final outgoing call to Xing that lasted only a minute. According to her later testimony, he sounded calm but distant. His last words to her that night: "If the cameras go dark, know that it wasn't an accident." On September 11, Yu Menglong would be dead. In an apartment, the silent cameras, missing data, all of it would become the epicenter of a storm that refused to fade. But on September 10, stark interview room in Chaoyang, he had already given the world its most haunting clue. "I can't escape them," words that still echo as a warning, a confession, and an indictment. Fei, standing before reporters weeks later, revealed that phrase publicly for the first time. Her voice broke as she recalled how he had confided in her that night. After leaving the police station, desperate to ensure that someone, anyone, remembered his warning. "He didn't just tell me," she said. "Told the police. He went to them first. Them to listen. And now, the only proof that remains is my memory, and the cameras that never recorded." Revelation set off a firestorm. Why had the police not acted on his plea? Why did the Chaoyang station lose the interview files? And above all, who were the faceless them you claimed he could never escape? These questions, suspended in the air like the static of a broken transmission, would shape the tragedy that followed on September 11th. The morning of September 11th began like any other in Chaoyang, Beijing. But by midday the district was paralyzed by the news. Menglong, beloved actor and singer, had been found lifeless in his apartment. There was no forced entry, no shattered glass, no visible struggle. The scene was disturbingly neat, almost staged. A glass of water sat overturned on the table beside his bed. His phone remained charging on the nightstand, glowing with unread messages. But what shocked investigators most was not the body. It was the silence. Every camera in Menglong's home, front door, hallway, living room, was offline. Indicator lights blinked, mocking the detectives as they tried to recover even a fragment of data. No recordings from the night of September 10th. No security footage from the hours leading up to his death. The system had been scrubbed clean. Neighbors recalled faint noises around midnight, footsteps, squeak of a door hinge, then silence. One neighbor said she heard what she thought was a muffled cry, quickly cut off. Another noticed a dark figure leaving through the rear stairwell just before dawn. But without the cameras, every account remained just that, a story with no proof. September 12th, the Beijing Municipal Police issued a chilling statement. All available CCTV data from Menglong's residences are retrievable due to system malfunction. The words hit like a grenade. Fans, journalists, and legal experts exploded in outrage. But every single camera in a modern apartment block failed simultaneously. Within hours, hashtags trended worldwide. Who silenced you? Justice for Menglong, CCTV blackout. The pressure mounted until investigators were forced to dig deeper. That was when the name Xing surfaced, a former technician with connections to Yu's management company, now accused of being the executioner. When confronted, Xing at first denied involvement. His evidence piled up, traces of his DNA on a balcony railing, his fingerprints on the rear door. He broke. In a packed courtroom, under the weight of the death penalty, Xing confessed. "I was not the mastermind," he rasped. "Hollow. I was the blade. They handed me the access codes. They told me to blind the cameras before I entered. I can't name them here, because you already know who they are." Courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Yu's family wept uncontrollably. The judge banged the gavel, demanding order. Then came the most devastating revelation. According to Xing, Yu had been silenced not for personal vengeance, but because he had discovered documents that would ruin powerful men, the contracts, the evidence of laundering and exploitation. Yu had intended to go public, and his management company, terrified of exposure, had allegedly ordered the erasure of his surveillance system, sealing his fate. Amid the storm, Xing emerged as the voice of grief and defiance, standing before a sea of microphones. Recounted the last message she ever received from you. Sent the night of September 10th, "If the cameras go dark, it wasn't an accident." She broke down, covering her face with trembling hands. "He went to the Chaoyang police station," she sobbed. "He told them everything. He told them he couldn't escape. And still, no one stopped this." Her testimony ignited fury. Protesters flooded the streets with candles and posters bearing Yu's face. Fans held vigils in Beijing, Shanghai, Seoul, and Tokyo, chanting his name late into the night. International media seized on the scandal, dubbing it the Silent Star case. Analysts questioned the integrity of both the management company and the authorities who ignored Yu's warning. As the trial dragged on, Xing repeated his confession, "I did what I was told. The cameras were erased because they didn't want the world to see." He begged for mercy, not for himself, but for her. "Told me, before I ended it, don't touch Xing. She must live." Words cracked the hearts of millions. But still, the questions remain. The order. Why were police files from the Chaoyang station conveniently misplaced? Why did no one protect Yu despite his desperate plea? The public demanded answers. But the silence from official channels grew louder with each passing day. On September 30th, the night of the massive vigil in Beijing, Xing lit a single candle at Yu's memorial. Surrounded by thousands of grieving fans, she whispered into the microphone, "He told me he couldn't escape them. But I promise you this, his voice will never vanish. Not let them bury the truth. The crowd erupted in chants, the candlelight reflecting in their tears. The murder of Yu Menglong remains more than a personal tragedy. It has become a wound carved into the conscience of the nation, a story of love, betrayal, corruption, and silence. That asks one final question: if a man warns the police, confides to the woman he loves, behind his last words, "I can't escape them," any more must fall before the world decides to listen.